Hi, my name is Kelly Waymond. Welcome to the Silhouette YouTube channel. Today we're going to be making a paper cosmos. Make sure that you put any comments or questions in the comment section below, and be sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you're notified of any new content we create. Let's go ahead and talk about what supplies you'll need for today's project. Alright, so for today's paper cosmos we're going to be using we'll use the Cameo machine, but you can use the Silhouette portrait machine. This is small enough of a project that you can fit it on the portrait mat. But I'm going to be using kind of a light pink color. These are all a medium weight cardstock, 65 pound. We'll use pink for the flower petals, a bright yellow for the center of the flower, and then we'll use a medium green for the leaves. So those are the three colors of cardstock we'll be using. We will also be using a pan pastel soft artist chalk. So this is not, you don't have to use this, you don't even have to use any color on it, but if you have something that will give you this bright hot pink or magenta color, you'll really like that. I'm going to use just a makeup blending brush to put that on. We'll also use a Silhouette spatula tool. We're going to use a piece of paper towel if you're using a chalk pastel. We'll use a black alcohol ink marker, and the reason it should be alcohol ink is because we're going to be getting the flower a little bit wet, and the alcohol ink will not bleed when it gets wet. We will also use some bright green floral tape, some shade of green that will match your green cardstock. We'll use a little bit of white glue. We'll use a little bit of water in a spray bottle. We'll need a hot glue gun and some floral wire. So this is a paper covered green 18 gauge floral wire, and if you don't have paper covered floral wire, that's fine. It can be just the bare wire, but I usually like having paper covered. We will use just a regular cutting mat and a regular auto blade, and I think, yep, that is all we will need for supplies. So now let's go ahead and go into the software. So here we are in Silhouette Studio. I've already purchased this design, so I'm going to go into the library, and this design ID number is 330958. So you can type that into the search bar or just type Cosmos. If you need to purchase the design, it is 330958. So I'll just double click to open that. And we'll do a little bit of adjustment to the file. First of all, we do not need this purse. You can use it for your own project if you want to, but we are just making the flower today. So I'll select that and delete it. I don't need any of these words. So I'll drag those off and just select them and delete them. When working with this file, I realized that some of the line thickness was a little bit high, so I'm just going to type up here in the quick access toolbar. There's a point size for your line thickness. I'm going to type 0.0, and that usually doesn't matter unless you're printing things, but I like it at 0 point so the lines look a little more normal. Okay, so now just so I know what I'm cutting, I am going to recolor these pieces so I know what color of cardstock to cut them from. So these little center pieces, the stamen, I'm going to go here in my quick access toolbar and change the fill color to yellow, and then I will select the flower, and again up here with the fill color I'll just change it to a pink, and then these leaves and the calyx are green, so I'll just pick a medium green. And so now these can be placed on my page to be cut. Now since they won't take up most of the page and they're all going to be the same weight of cardstock, I can cut them at the same time. So you can either type G on your keyboard to show the grid, or you can increase your transparency level so you can see the grid underneath. So I'm going to cut my pink flower. See, I'll put that in the upper right corner, and I will put these yellow flowers. I'm going to turn them sideways for the piece of yellow cardstock that I've got. So I'm going to hold my shift while I drag that green rotation handle, and that'll snap to a perfect 90-degree angle. So I'll place those there. I know I can see here the grid lines that can be 2 inches wide and 6 inches long. Let's see, I'm going to bump that up just a little higher. I believe my piece is 5.5 inches. Okay, and then the green, I have a green piece of cardstock that I know I can put at the 6-inch mark. So I'm just using this grid as a guide so I know where I can put my scraps of paper, and then I only have to send it once. So let's go over to the Send tab. And all of these, they're showing with their bold cut lines, which is good. I am going to choose the material for pattern paper medium. So the reason I choose this one is because it's the closest to the cardstock I use. It's 65 pound, and the settings of force 30 and speed 5 I really like. I am going to change my blade depth to 4. That almost always works well for me. And I have done a test cut. If you, especially if you are, when you're cutting these tiny detailed pieces, you're going to want to do a test cut, a practice cut, and make sure that your settings are good. A sharp blade is important when you are doing cuts like this. If your blade's really sharp, you could go down to a blade 3, but just try it on a 3 or 4 and you'll be pretty close and can adjust from there. All right, so that is all set up, and so all I need to do is load my paper onto my cutting mat, load my cutting mat into my machine, and then I'm going to click Send down here once that is ready. Okay, so I have my cutting mat here. I'll peel off the cover and save that to keep it clean. And then just need to put my paper in the same spot as I did on the virtual mat. So the pink was in the upper right corner, and the yellow is in the upper left corner. And then I put my green pieces below the 6-inch mark. So that's where I'll place my green paper. So I know my designs were all below the 6-inch mark in that area there. All right, and I've got my roller adjusted out to the farthest position on the Cameo, so I've got it set up for the mat, and I have my auto blade loaded. So now, just load that. And I'll click Send in the software. All right, now that that has finished cutting, we'll just make sure that those are going to come off. Yep, those cut pretty well, so I'll unload that. And when you are working with detail pieces like this, it's important to go slowly and carefully as you're peeling these off. And I like to flip the mat upside down. That often helps. I'll just carefully peel off all of these pieces. spatula tool involved here. There we go. And then again, these yellow center pieces are pretty detailed. All right, once you have all of your pieces, and you could use larger pieces of paper and cut cut a whole bunch of Cosmos pieces. If you're doing that, you do 1 petal per flower, 4 of these yellow center stamen, 1 calyx per flower, and 3 of these kind of lacy leaves per flower. So let's go ahead and start with the flower itself. All right, so we'll start with this flower, and here's where I'm going to use my paper towel. This is kind of going to keep my work surface protected while I work with the Pan Pastel. So this is a very soft pastel chalk. You could also use probably a stick chalk pastel. I've also used an ink pad, and if you're using an ink pad or any pastel, you can use one of these soft brushes to get kind of a smooth blend. So I'm just going to make a circle of this color in the center and just kind of rub it in a circular motion. It does not go all the way out to the tips of the petals, but you want maybe half, or the bottom third to bottom half of each individual petal. And we do not need to color the back side, we only need to color the top. Then that's all we needed for the color of the Cosmos. For the design, Cosmos has a texture to it, kind of striped lines. So I'm going to take the back of my spatula tool, and I'm just going to draw lines from these little valley points to the center circle. So you could use all kinds of tools to do this part, but I just find my spatula tool is always handy. And your lines don't have to be perfect. I'm just drawing from those little dips in the petal down towards the center. And I am pressing on the side that has the color added to it. So we're just going to do those pressed lines with each petal. And it's helpful to have a soft surface. I'm just using my paper towel, that's soft enough. If you had a piece of craft foam, you could also use craft foam as your soft surface that lets you do that embossing. Okay, so that's all we need for the flower at this time. Now we will color our little center stamen pieces. So here we're going to use a black alcohol ink marker. The brand doesn't matter, but alcohol ink is going to be your best choice. We're just going to brush from the center, similar to the pink flower. We're not going to cover all of the yellow, we're just going to brush in the center, maybe a third to halfway up each of those little yellow spokes. And again, only one side on most of them. On 3 of them we'll just color the one side, and on 1 we will color both. So you don't want it to be a perfect round circle. It should have little bits that are uneven. But really it won't be seen overall, so don't stress too much about it. It's just going to give us this dark effect that Cosmos centers have, where they've got a little bit of dark underneath the yellow. So on your last piece, we're going to go ahead and add that black to the center of both sides. All right, so now we are going to add our centers to a piece of wire. Now, I find that it helps to bend the tip of the wire. You don't have to do that, but it gives just a little bit more surface area. So if you've got a pair of needle nose pliers, you can bend and create just a little loop. And then we're going to take our little water bottle and our hot glue gun, and we'll save this double-sided one for the last. But we'll just spritz a little bit of water on that center. And with the dark side facing up, we're just going to kind of crumple it up. And then open it gently enough to slide our wire on. So these pieces all have a hole in the center, so it's easy to work with layering onto a wire. So we're not going to poke the looped end through, we're going to poke the non-loop end. Just slide it down. And this is going to go all the way up, so the loop is in the center there. We'll add a little bit of hot glue to that loop. And then close that piece around it. And it should still be a little bit damp, so you can crumple it again. And then we'll move on to the next piece. Same thing, we'll give it a little spritz of water. And we're going to be crumpling it. You can kind of get it started with little creases with your thumb. And we can do more crumpling once we slide it up there. So slide your wire. And once it gets up there, we will add just a little bit of glue to the bottom of the piece that's already there. And then we'll slide this one up and crumple it around the one that's there. Next one, little spritz. Make sure it gets a little moisture, and then we'll start to crumple it a little bit. Slide that wire up. A little bit of glue at the base, and you could use white glue. A lot of times I'll use hot glue if I know it won't be seen, because hot glue is just a little faster. So press that up against the pieces that are already there against the glue, and crumple that some more. And then we'll add our final centerpiece. This is the one with black on both sides. Same thing as before. We're just giving a little bit of crease and crumpling, and then we'll slide it up the wire. And add a little bit of glue. Make sure that gets some good crumpling up there also. Now we have our center, and when we fluff that out a little bit, which we can do in a minute when it's dry, you're going to see some of that black, that darker center, which is pretty typical of Cosmos. It's a good look for that flower. Makes it distinctive. Okay, so now for our flower, where we've got these creases, we're just going to bend it upwards a little bit. So sometimes the flowers you're going to emboss so the veins are on the outside, and some flowers you're going to fold it up so the veins have it curling the petals up. And that gives us our texture for the flower. Petals, we'll slide that up there and add either white glue or hot glue to the base. You try not to let that glue show. And just pull that up. And you can kind of cup with your fingers and bend those petals up. And then we're going to fluff out the center just a little bit with your fingernail. So then you've got your center and you've got your petals, and they don't have to overlap evenly. If you look at real Cosmos, they don't overlap in some perfect spiral. It's just a little bit of overlap. Okay, and then for this piece down here that's going to go at the base of the flower, just going to bend or just roll your thumb against the cardstock against your scraper tool, just so it kind of curls down a little bit. And you could do that with your fingers too. When we put it on our flower, we want these little pointy pieces to go down away from the flower. So we'll slide it up the wire. And again, add just a little bit of glue. So that will stay in place. And then we will use our floral tape. We're going to wrap the stem with floral tape. You can just pull off a good chunk of it. When you're working with floral tape, you need to activate kind of this wax, tacky adhesive on it, and it'll stick to itself. So just pull your floral tape to activate that adhesive, and you can kind of warm it up with your thumbs a little bit. And we are going to, you can start it down a little bit lower, just pinch to get that to start sticking to itself. Slide it up so it's up against the base of the flower. And then you're just going to kind of tug, keep pressure pulling on that so you don't get wrinkles, and it keeps the tape, the wax tacky part of it activated. So once you wrap down, maybe a couple of inches, Then we're going to add one of these leaves. So the leaves we're just going to add with floral tape. So we're just going to make sure that it gets, that base of that leaf gets included as we wrap and twist. And then we'll go down another couple inches. And add another leaf. So we're just making sure that that base of that leaf gets tucked in and tightly held with that floral tape. And the final leaf. And of course you can cut more leaves if you want, but with this design I think the 3 leaves are pretty good. And if your floral tape tears as you're pulling on it, that's not a problem. You just cover and start wrapping on top of where it tore. All right, so we'll just finish wrapping this down. You can always cut it shorter later if you want to, but I'm just going to finish wrapping so it looks consistent. And then your final step is you're just going to give a little bit of bending. Since this is a wildflower, it looks really good if you give some little gentle bends into your wire so it's not completely straight. And that just makes it look a little more natural. So here we have our finished cosmos. You can give a little bit of crumple to the leaves, just again to add some texture. And a single cosmos is beautiful, but these are so simple that you can just make a whole bunch of them and put them together in a vase or give them away. It's just such a pretty look. Thank you for joining me for this Cosmos project. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you post comments in the comment section if you have questions or if you would have ideas on other projects you would like to see, and we'll try and see if we can create some more classes for you. So thank you for joining me.